And back. Right, can we roll?
Rolling.
Rolling.
64, take 2.
Speed.
Action.
Lisa, how many times do I have to tell you? I don't love you. I can't love you. You've heard the rumors about me, well, they're true. All I can say is, let it suffice for me to say that I prefer the company of other men.
Another smokescreen. All these lies and rumors of yours, Leo. Well, I know the truth. I see how you look at me. The way you lust after me, even. So what are you going to do about it?
Do about it? Absolutely nothing. In fact, we're finished.
What?
Your portrait is...
Cut. Okay,
Yep.
lovely.
That was clear.
Okay, good. Very nice acting. What's next shot, Tracy?
Peter Davison and I get together quite frequently to discuss ideas for scripts. Very often they don't reach the light of day, but I can very well remember I just finished cutting Undercover and was chatting it over with Peter one day, and he suddenly said, well, I've got this good idea for a story.
Well, the idea first occurred to me well over a year before I even started writing the script. It occurred because I had read a book about the life of Leonardo da Vinci and how he'd taken 4 years to paint the Mona Lisa. I also discovered he wasn't just a painter. He was an artist in the sense that he was an architect and also a military engineer and a great scientist. But I began to wonder about him a bit because I thought, why did it take him 4 years to paint the Mona Lisa? 4 years. And I then found that there were gaps, unexplained gaps in his life, where he apparently disappeared, and I thought, where did he go to? And why did he go? And it wasn't until some time after that I began to get these thoughts in my mind, and my imagination started to fill in the answers. And it was because of this that I decided to turn it into a little film script.
Just after Christmas he phoned us up and said, I've got it, I've got the story about Leonardo da Vinci. So went round, had a look at it, and it was a very dramatic scene about Leonardo da Vinci painting the Mona Lisa.
Terry looked at the script, and initially he thought it was a good idea, but was unhappy about one or two things.
The actual story, to my mind, didn't have quite the structure that I was interested in.
So he asked me to change certain parts of it. We argued. I mean, it's pretty normal for a scriptwriter to want to defend what he's actually written, and it's pretty normal for a producer to say, sorry, I don't think that's good enough. So we sat down, and between us we worked it out, and I rewrote it again.
The script went through something like 16 different rewrites before we actually showed the actors it. And after that point it went through about 2 or 3 rewrites where they said, well, I can't say that, I'd rather say this. Needless to say, every time we changed a word, Peter said, that wasn't what I meant at all.
In fact, from then on, everybody that read the script wanted a few alterations. Each time this meant I had to rewrite it. And what actually happened was, over a period of about 4 months, I did 16 script rewrites. And then I said, that's it, that's enough, take it or leave it. Unfortunately, they did agree to accept it. So what's going to happen at the end of all this is they have influenced the way I've written the final script, and if the film is a success, the whole crew and all the actors, and particularly Terry the producer, are going to take all the credit. And if it's a flop, they're all going to blame me. And that's what being a scriptwriter is all about, I think. All right. Yeah, sounds good to me. Yeah? Hold on, Eric. You seen Len yet?
No, sorry.
No. All right, Eric. Yeah, I'll leave that to you.
To try and make the project as realistic as possible, we tried to get natural locations, and we felt that if we could get a proper newspaper office, then we would stand a chance of making the thing look really first class. So I wrote to Martin King at the Evening Echo, and he said, yeah, it's no problem at all, why don't you come over and do a recce. So we went over, Tony, Simon and myself, took some still photos of the various possible locations, and we actually used those as the basis for scripting the Evening Echo sequence, or the newspaper sequence. They were very, very cooperative at the Evening Echo. We took over most of their department for a whole half a day, from about midday up to about 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening.
Yes, I'm editor of the Evening Echo. I've been here about 3.5 months. In fact, I think I'd only been here about a week or two when Terry Mendoza contacted us and asked if it would be all right to come and film here, and we were more than happy. In the editorial department where the film's been made, here there are about 40, 45 people normally, and then we have about 25, 30 people based at Southend. Shot 4, take 6.
Right, what we got, John?
Is this it? Where's the focus? What are we supposed to be looking at? That's not it, it's all John.
That's great. That really establishes that this chap is a bit of a prickly character. The next one we got coming in, Roy, is where Len comes around the corner, and it's really where the first confrontation between the two comes. So.
We needed to choose a photographer who was more than a photographer, somebody who understood the language of movies, who could do a storyboard and write a treatment for it. So we thought of Simon Frith. Now, I used Simon Frith in other films, and he's also an award-winning filmmaker in his own right. On top of that, he shoots the pictures which illustrate my magazine articles and the pictures that are in my book.
A storyboard is a series of sketches and dialogue that represents the finished film. It's a bit like a very simple comic book. In fact, going through the motion of preparing one is the thought process that turns a script into a movie, and although it's only on paper, it provides the director and the cameraman with an overall impression of the film before any filming takes place. When the storyboard is finished, a shooting schedule of the shots is produced, because although the storyboard represents the logical sequence of events, it's not filmed in that order. For example, if two actors are engaged in conversation, it's more practical to film all of the shots of the first person before moving the camera and lights, but the editor can then assemble it into the correct order later on.
South Church Hall has got one room in it which is of exactly the right period. Normally it's shut off to the public, and a little bit of gentle arm twisting of the curator, and he agreed to let us in on the day when it's normally closed to the public.
It's the oldest part of the hall, dates from about 1290, so we're near enough 700 years old. It has of course been altered over the centuries, so bits have been added to it, and more recently it was restored in the 1920s, so restored back mainly to its medieval appearance. The earliest reference we have to a family bearing the name of the manor, the South Church family, is somewhere in the middle of the 12th century, about probably in the late 1160s, is the earliest possible date for the document which first tells us that they were here. So, in technical terms, it's a late creation of a mezzanine lordship.
We took away all the modern things which made it obvious that we were in the 20th century. After that, our props boys, Roy and John, moved in. They brought in various twigs and branches to hide up the modern light fitting on the ceiling, and there was a burglar alarm, little passive infrared detector that had to be covered up as well, and various other bits and pieces around the room. So they did a wonderful job because you can't see any modern fittings there at all. It was very exciting and very daunting turning up about 7 o'clock on that Monday morning. We'd had the two main cast members found that we'd taken over someone's house to be used for makeup so they could start early, so I went and made sure that they were underway first of all, then went to South Church Hall, and by the time I arrived there was already quite a mountain of equipment outside. I was feeling a little bit apprehensive because I knew in my heart that really what we were trying to shoot in one day was 2 days worth of filming.
You missed that, didn't you?
No, I didn't.
A bit of gaff tape. I just so happen to have this here. Lise? I'm sweating a bit, darling.
Right, you're not trying.
Sorry. Am I not?
You are, yeah.
Oh, that's fine. I don't care.
Well, I've known Dave for probably 3 or 4 years now. He first came to our knowledge when we were casting a little film about a garage robbery and we needed a baddie. And Peter Davison had written to the local paper saying, is anyone interested in taking part in films? And Dave was one of those who replied. He's nothing less than enthusiastic at all times. He was great in that, and that film did very well for us. A year or two later, I just was putting together a little comedy item, which was a takeoff of Roger Cook. And I asked Dave, would you be willing to take part in that? And he jumped at the idea, and once again we had a great time doing it. Peter Davison saw this and said, well, perhaps we could involve Dave in something with a bit more, with a bit more meat in it. And I suppose really that the character of Leonardo da Vinci was really written with Dave in mind.
The way I got involved in this particular project was really a phone call from Peter Davison, who wrote it. And he said, would you like to look at the script? And I said, yes, I'd love to.
David Aldous I'd known because I'd worked with him before and I'd watched some of his stuff. So I gave him a ring, sent him a copy of the rough draft.
I said, yeah, I'd love to do it. And then it just really worked from there, and there were rewrite after rewrite after rewrite. And then finally, the final script was just tremendous.
What on earth is this? What game is this you're playing? This isn't me. It's nothing like me. How dare you? Why isn't it me?
It is you.
Don't be ridiculous. If you think that's me, you need your head examined. Why, she's ugly. She's got no eyebrows and her mouth's all twisted.
I don't believe it. Of course it's not exactly you. Even that upstart Michelangelo can paint a simple likeness. What I've done is to bring out the inner you.
As far as Tricia is concerned, and the way she became involved was a little bit more roundabout. We'd done a dramatised documentary about 18 months before and used a young girl who'd said, oh, my drama teacher's quite interested in taking part in a project if you've ever got something suitable. And so I had Tricia's name on file. I had never met her, and we'd got to the point where we'd cast Dave and we had no Mona Lisa. And so I thought, well, perhaps it's worth having a word with this young lady and just see what she's like. And as soon as she called at the door, I knew this was our Mona Lisa.
I've never actually done a film before. This is my first film. I've done a few commercials and corporate training videos, things like that, but to sort of create a character, and especially with this film, because it's one character in two sort of periods of time, which has been great to work on, great experience for me.
It was through Tricia that we then got the other two characters involved, because at one of the preliminary meetings where we were discussing the various problems that had arisen, at that time we didn't have the editor, and neither did we have the chap who plays Dave, the gopher with the coffee. And Tricia said, well, you should use Roy Foster and Richard, they'll both be fine for that. And her judgment was very much borne out by the finished film.
Len? Liz? Mr. Davison, have you seen Liz? She asked me to get her...
That toe rag. He's skived off to the pub, hasn't he, with that tart?
We knew we were going to be allowed to use South Church Hall for a day, but it was fairly obvious that we'd only get one day in there. Apart from anything else, 16 people had to take time off work to get there, so it had to be done in one day. Because of those sort of confines, everything had to work like clockwork. So we decided to have a full dress rehearsal somewhere else. To make the dress rehearsal as meaningful as possible, we mapped out on the floor exactly where all the different props were going to be. And the whole thing was measured out very precisely. In the event, that rehearsal really saved the project. I think without that rehearsal there wouldn't have been a finished film.
Where's this love scene supposed to take place?
Well, the thing is,
It's take place right in the middle.
the camera's going to end up here. Yes, here. So the original shot was, I'm just going you back. Originally, I was going to come back like this.
From me?
From you, shot of you, back and round as you join.
As near the middle of the room as possible to give us enough room to bring the camera around.
Then I've got to move. I've got to find a movement.
You could always drop your pen.
What, my bic?
Yeah.
Oh, look, my bic.
My big's been dropped.
Right. Can you see my point now? I've got to find a motivation to move. I can't just move for nothing.
Whatever aspect of the project you considered, different things came to light that needed to be improved upon. For example, in the storyboard we had a large number of shots where the camera had to move about, and it became very evident that it was difficult to control the camera in such a confined space. We hadn't realised that before. In terms of microphone technique, we had to get the receivers for the radio microphones a great deal closer, as close as we possibly could to the transmitters, otherwise we were picking up all sorts of interference. There were problems in terms of editing that became evident at that point. Very often one character would tend to slightly overlap their dialogue on the other character, which was fine until you wanted to change shot. It became very difficult finding a point where a shot could be changed. So virtually you could say that particular rehearsal, we had like a post-mortem 2 or 3 days later with Tony Lynch, Simon Frith and myself, and it was very evident to all three of us that major surgery had to be done both to the storyboard and to every other aspect of the production. And as a consequence of that, the actual day itself seemed to go off like clockwork.
Your very nature, your very inner soul, especially that patronising cocksure smirk of yours.
It is, you damn it.
You absolute fool.
You've already said that.
Well, it's true. And you can keep your disgusting painting. I'll never come and sit for you again.
I don't want you to. No.
Cut.
Sorry, were you asking me to look
yeah,
out?
sorry.
Sorry.
Did direct you one.
Pretty soon it became obvious that this was quite a major project and it was going to need a lot of people involved. I think on the main shoot at South Church Hall there were something like 16 people there, and because it was so tightly scripted, there was such a lot to shoot in one day, we knew that there wasn't time for people to actually go off set at all. So we got Elaine Brackstone who kindly do all the catering for us on that day. It's phenomenal just how much organisation is needed to get 16 people together for a 12-hour shoot with virtually no breaks.
Well, the next shot is we've done all these. We haven't done the close-ups yet, which
we haven't done the shot of the grape going into the mouth with a slow zoom.
No, and we haven't done it. We'll do this one now. I'm set up in there for that one,
right. And
then it's basically this one.
Well, while you're in that shot, you can do it as a zoom and do.
What I will do is
the grape.
I want to do a two-shot.
When you're set up for that, you should be able to zoom in just to do that shot.
Yeah.
The slow zoom into the grape.
Yes.
Thing while the camera's in the same position.
You continue. Because that one's taken out anyway because it's a revised shot.
53, take one.
Speed.
Action.
Admit it. Admit what?
That you're in love with me.
Pardon? What did you say? Say that again. And chuck it in the gob properly.
Don't spit it all over the floor.
Press that. Okay, Tony, technically on that.
Looks all right from here, yeah.
Zoom's all right. Okay.
Tony Lynch, who was not only looking after the lighting, which was quite difficult because the lighting on that day was mixed lighting. We had sunshine, although the sun then went in partway through the day. Then it got dark halfway through the shoot. So he had his work cut out to keep the lighting consistent over the whole day. Tony didn't just look after lighting, he also was looking after the technical side. He was seated outside the main location room and he was looking at the monitors the whole time just to check that all the different aspects were knitting together as they should.
I just think it's another extra option to start.
You're not going with that? Looks terrible. The glare on that side of the face is doing Trish no favours whatsoever. I'll hang a diffuser from there for that shot.
Right, it's terrible.
We had listed out the order with which each shot was going to be taken to make the maximum use of any particular lighting setup. Tony had to alter the lights between different takes depending on whether we were shooting a close-up or a wider shot. And Tracy Birch was sitting out in the control room looking after continuity to make sure the actors were facing the right direction to deliver their lines. Otherwise you get some rather bad continuity errors which don't really come to light until one starts to put the stuff together on the rough cut. Paul Mercer, who was in charge of sound on that day, we were working with 2 radio microphones. This was decided because the actors could then move around the room and we could keep the same sort of vocal quality throughout the piece.
Yep. We're do you want to go places? Right, the situation with the sound is that actually it's been working very well. We were a bit worried about the sound during rehearsals, as well as very first thing this morning, but we've now sorted out all the problems with the radio mics. We've got 2 separate channels working and 2 separate receivers and transmitters. The sound, with the exception of 1 or 2 slight clicks, has been very, very good. The quality on the cans seems to be very good, and we've also played it back on the monitor, and I think the sound quality is a lot better than what we've had in previous productions.
Of course there was Elaine, who was invaluable not just in the catering, but she'd made the most wonderful costumes. And she was even very good-natured when she had to go back and remake one costume when it became apparent at the rehearsal that it wasn't giving exactly the appearance that we had intended.
I do a little bit of needlework and designing, and before I knew where I was clobbered into making the Mona Lisa's dress, and they just said, oh, you know, just a little old dress with a few sort of stitches in. And then the next thing, I saw sketches which I nearly died. You know, they were from the archives, I believe. And I thought, I've landed myself with something now, but I do love a challenge.
With this project, the same as with most of the projects that I work on, I tend to piece the pieces of video together very roughly at first to make what's called a rough cut, really just to see if the action is flowing as it's anticipated. Once we're happy that it's flowing reasonably well, a much finer cut is then done, and then finally the final finished item. In this particular instance we were very fortunate. Roy Bowles in Surrey was happy to get involved with us. He's got the most superb editing setup. Once again, Roy's another one of these chaps, another fresh pair of eyes. Several times he's turned to me and said, Terry, that doesn't work, and I've looked at it and it hasn't worked, and he's seeing it for the first time, has been able to see what we haven't seen because we've seen it too often. And once again, it's something which helps to polish the finished item.
You don't fool me. Anyhow, what about these so-called inventions of yours? You call this work? A silly student, drawing no less. What's it supposed to be, anyhow?
It's part of an armoured war machine for transporting soldiers.
Oh, very clever.
Lisa Mortimer, one of the newest members of our team, joined during the early planning stages as our makeup artist, and such was the effectiveness of her work that Tony's job on lighting was made considerably easier. And not only that, she was also a great moral support to the actors, especially during the longer filming sessions.
Whenever you're ready. Can you move your head a little bit more towards me? That's it. Turn it around just a little bit more. Bring your head down slightly. That's lovely. No, over just a shade.
How much longer are you going to be? My bum's going to sleep.
As long as it doesn't snore. No, it's still not right. Look, I want the classic look, but with bags of oomph. Look at the book. Now you can see how she's holding her head, and try and copy her expression as well.
Trevor Dennis is our technical boffin and another relatively new member. Not only did he design and build the crane, but he was also responsible for converting the concept of the Travelator into a full working model.
Well, the Travelator is a time machine, in fact, built in the present day by a character from drawings by Leonardo da Vinci, and it provides the link between the two time periods. Well, I had very little design brief as such. I just considered what components might be on the front of a time machine and fitted them all together. It has this central dial here, which shows the direction and speed of time travel. The Latin here, hora, lux and annus for hour, day and year. Regressus to go back, posterum tempus to go forward. It has a fuel gauge, impetus with minimum and maximum, an on-off switch, essential of course. As you turn it on, this disc rotates by a motor inside. A light flashes through the translucent perspex that the painting's on, and we decided to link those together to make as much happen as possible on the film.
Careful! Oh no, dear God!
Has it given me a challenge? Yes, it has. Yes, because it's combined a load of different emotions.
I think it's gone very well.
I've enjoyed it immensely. It's taken a lot of time.
To say I've enjoyed working on Time and Time Again would be an understatement. The immensity and complexity of the production is what attracted me in the first place. It's been an outlet for my creativity, and it's certainly a pleasure to work alongside people who enjoy what they're doing.
Oh, I knew you'd have to moan at something. Gordon bloody Bennett.
You turn the switch and it becomes the past, but you're just playing with time. And when you tell me that you don't know how, then things like that just play on my mind. I guess you wanted me to follow you all day, but
Well, Trish and I learn our lines always. We're always word perfect, aren't we, Trish?
don't think that I would ever follow you when you're just playing with time. Time and time again. You're just playing with time.
What about the future? Well, there's always El Dorado.
I saw the future in a photograph, taking us back to the past. Da Vinci took that Mona Lisa smile, and time turned around much too fast. I guess you wanted me to follow you all day, but that's just playing with time. Don't think that I would ever follow you when you're just...
And I cannot remember ever being in a situation of being on film and being that tired.
Well, every time any filmmaker makes a film, he looks at it afterwards and thinks, oh, I wish I'd thought of this. Why didn't I do that different? There's nobody I know, no writer, no filmmaker, who's ever satisfied that he's done the very best he can. And he always thinks, I'm going to do better on the next film. So yes, the story did change, but I'm glad it did.
She's got bits in her teeth, she says.
But it's been great fun. I'm pleased with the results. It looks good. It looks great on film as well. And I can't wait for the next project.
Oh, I hated seeing the rough cut. I hated it. So, yeah, I suppose I'll be terribly apprehensive. It's horrible. Absolutely horrible seeing myself on the screen.
I can't wait to see the finished bit, actually.
Peter first mentioned the idea of the script in December '91, and by the following January had given me a first draft. We started shooting in mid-June, and it was the following January when we finally put the project to bed.
So all round, yes, I think the team was well tested, but we'll test them even more on the next one.
It was a huge amount of work for a large number of people. Did I enjoy it? Well, there were frustrations, there were nightmares, there were elations. At the time it all seemed like jolly hard work. It's one of these things which is far more enjoyable in retrospect. So now with all the pain behind us, I think we're all itching to go on the next project.
You're just playing with time.
Right, excellent.
Where's the part?
We haven't wrapped. As far as the actors are concerned, we have wrapped. I think we have every shot that we need.